Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am here with the most amazing guest. I'm so blessed. I'm so honored to be here with you, Susan Benevides, CEO plus Relocation. How are you, Susan?
I'm great, Ben, and thank you. I'm honored to be here. Truly honored.
Susan, any day I can finagle you on here and have a conversation with you, whether we tape it or not, I feel like it's like the highlight of my day. We talked about this many times. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but when I came into this business, you were like, you were at the dais, you were the one, and I was like, she's amazing. And now to be able to even have these conversations, it's honestly a highlight for me. So thank
Well,
you again for being
you
with
are
us.
you are too complimentary, but thank you.
Hey, if you're watching right now, go ahead and get into the comments. I want to hear from you. I want to know who you are, where you are, what are you up to? We're going to be talking about DEI. We're going to be talking about, policy, program, procurement. We're going to be talking about our stories. We're going to be asking questions. If you want to ask a question to Susan, throw it in the comments. Let us know. Hit that like button. Let us know here. Let's see here. I want to make sure we're live. I think we are. Yes, we are. Oh, got a bunch of people on. That's great on LinkedIn. Everybody wants to hear from you, Susan. Susan, I want to ask you right now. Oh, we got people checking in. What's up? Cindy Salter, Dallas is here.
Oh, Cindy, I haven't seen her forever.
Yeah, look at that, Cindy. Cindy, I owe you lunch. We're going to do it one day. I promise. Jack Jampel, hi, Ben and Susan. Susan's one of my favorites, so I'll give her my softball questions. There you go, Jack. Appreciate you. Shane
Oh,
Tart. Great. Vinny Valverde.
oh, Vinny.
See? Are you feeling the love already?
I am feeling love. I miss all these
I
people.
know.
Oh,
Oh
from
my
Germany.
God.
This is awesome. I could
One
just
day
sit here
we'll,
and read their names all day.
I know. One day we'll be hugging everybody soon. What's up,
I
Alan?
know.
Farrell
The West
Elliott.
Coast.
Janet.
Oh,
Look
this
at
is like,
this.
oh, Lisa Ross. Love your new artwork, Lisa. Keep going.
That's awesome. Samir Kadakar
Oh
from
my
the
gosh,
West
this is
Coast.
amazing.
Michael Falia. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been a,
baking.
he says, I've been a Susan fan for years, all the way back to
Bay Perm. That was before it was BAM.
oh, thank God it's
Yeah.
banned.
No, Michael's aging himself. Thanks, Mike. Don't include me in that pot.
Oh my gosh, you guys are buying beers with Buffalo Nickels back at Bay
Oh
Perm.
yeah, for sure.
I love it. We're gonna have some fun today. I know it already. This is great. Jill in the house.
Oh, Jill.
Quigley,
Hey, Q.
Gustavo.
Look at Gustavo. Everybody's here.
Yeah, it's a party. Leslie. Hey,
Oh,
everybody, hit that
Leslie.
like button. Let everybody know we're here right now. We got a bunch of people coming in right now on LinkedIn. This is great. Vinny misses going to Minnesota and visiting the Plus office. Amazing company and incredible people.
We miss you too, Vinny.
Real quick, let's riff on this real quick. You do have an amazing culture. That was one of the things that struck me early on, Susan. From the pillars to the events at ERC. I think I got a blister stuffing socks one time for homeless kids in San Diego. As soon as we thought we crushed that box, like out from under the table came another big box.
Yep.
Oh, it's like, oh man, I
I
should have
think you did
sandbagged.
25,000 kits in San Diego.
Incredible. And you were one of the first people that showed me, not told me, but actually showed me that doing good is good for business, and that it's not really like what we do for a living, but it's how we do it and what our impact is. But what was that like, building that culture at Plus? Vinny says amazing company, incredible people. How did you do that?
Well, I have to thank my parents. I mean, they really started the company 52 plus years ago, and you know, they really had the vision and the values, and we really live into that. It's not just words on a wall. It's really part of our culture, and I think it's what keeps us together. And it creates diversity. We bring diverse people in, but when you have values and a vision, which you can all strive for, it really gives you a sense of community. That's what I miss. I miss my community. I'm in this office today because I didn't want to hear the dog barking while all the dog walkers are walking by. But I'm the only one here. And I miss people. And so it's really living and breathing into our values and owning that.
So this brings me to another theme and another thing that we've talked about both privately and in preparation for the show. But one of the things you shared with me And I love this about you. You're so forward, and you're so transparent and candid. One of the things you shared with me was when you transitioned into leading the company, because it was a family business, which I wasn't really I didn't really realize until you really shared it with me. And some people who are newer to the business may not have known that. But what was that like, kind of coming in, and there was strong culture and there were strong values already put in place? And then how did you kind of make it your own and really make sure your fingerprints were on it? What was that process like for you?
Well, I've been at the company. I celebrated this year will be 31 years, and I got into this business and I didn't want to. I mean, it was a family business, and they lost a receptionist. My parents called and said, "Get up here, you're going to answer phones." And I wanted to be a broadcast journalist, so this isn't what I wanted to do. And it ended up to be that I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just kept doing every job within the company. And within that, I really started to learn, I mean, from accounting to a counselor to expense management to account management to sales. But I really saw the impact that the values and the vision had and how it was really making a difference. I think we kept it too secret for a while. So one of the things when I was
What do you mean you kept it too secret? I want to understand that.
it
What
was
does that
really
mean?
internal. I think from an external piece, it was felt, but we didn't use it quite as we did, So when I came out in 2006, became something that we were living externally and
Right.
talking about it. And so we'd sit down with a prospect, and first thing I didn't say is, well, here's the 10 things we can do for you. I'm like, I need you to understand who we are and what we believe in and our culture. And you'll see it when you talk to our clients. You'll see it when you talk to our employees. So for us, it was really bringing it out externally, bringing it to ERC and saying, we could have a client dinner, or we could take all that money and decide to create kits for the homeless and invite our competitors and our suppliers and our friends and everybody to do a better cause. So it was, I think, bringing it to the external world where people now say, we get it. I think they had it before, but as we continue to grow, and even when we were opening offices, worldwide, putting our employees in there for a couple of years so that culture created. And I will tell you, it is worldwide.
And I'll tell you what, I've been to a lot of dinners at ERC and a lot of cocktail hours, and I've seen contortionists, I've seen trapeze artists, I've seen sushi lady, I've seen snake handlers. But the thing that I talk about the most are some of the plus outreach events where we've knitted quilts, for women's shelters, or
Yep.
The homeless youth in San Diego or whatever. And so I think from a marketing standpoint, I think it touches people when you don't only talk about your values, but you live them and you allow other people to live them with you. And I think that's just so awesome. I want to make sure everybody that's watching right now knows that this is full participation. Throw your comments, throw your questions in there. I love it when you get involved here. The show's always better when you're involved. So please, whatever your questions are for Susan, I want to talk about it. Yeah, we're gonna do it. I know this is great. So, but now it's International, Women's Month, right? And International Women's Day is on March 8th. But really, the whole month of March is really kind of become about celebrating the contribution, the voices, the history of women, and that's one of the things I wanted to kind of bring you on to talk about a little bit too, from a DE&I perspective, and not just women's issues, but also just from an overarching comprehensive DE&I perspective. What role do we as global mobility professionals have in the advancement of DE&I policies, initiatives, et cetera?
An important one. And I'm not going to be ashamed to be very direct about that. I think
Please.
I've asked the question to some people, and they say, well, I don't know, that's really not our role. And I'm saying it's everybody's role today. In Q1 of 2020, oh gosh, I hate to even look back there, only 4% of the S&P 500 were talking about DE&I. In Q2, it was 40%. We're now starting to see those initiatives roll out from the S&P 500. And even then, some people are saying, they might be talking about it, They might be setting metrics, but we're really not seeing that movement yet, right? And I think so much that went on. I mean, with women, the social unrest brought a lot last year, right? And rightfully so. But the women and women in this, but this isn't new. But we're finally having a platform in which to raise it up. And I know it's difficult because you have to look inward. You have to look at your program. You have to be willing to say, is this good or is this not good? I mean, we take, diversity training, but do we go to our DE&I groups within organizations and say, can you come look at my policies and my program and be honest with me on whether this is good or not?
Well, and knowing though,
oh, sorry.
But no, I'm sorry to interrupt. So Susan, but I mean, and knowing that whatever their answer is going to be, the answer is really going to be not good enough. So, I mean, it's going into this conversation, knowing that we're going to have work to do. This question of how much work do we have to do?
Right. And I think you have to do it. I would start of a mobility team. Start there, the conversations. We created a Conversations for Change in our organization last year where we take difficult topics, we podcast, books, everything, and groups get together and they have small group discussions about these topics because people don't want to talk about race. They don't want to talk about it because it may have to require you to look in and say, oh my gosh, indirectly or directly, am I that person, right? So I think, to me, teams need to start with themselves and say, are we willing to acknowledge that there are some things we may say, we may do, practices that aren't right? And then you say, now let's take a look at our program and have the same open lens and perspective.
Well, so let's go back. Let's go. I want to understand more about that. So the conversations that you're having internally, right? Because I think that you're right. That's the first work you do is doing the internal work, whether it's micro internal personally or it's macro internal, within the company. How did you get there to that point where you said we need to talk about this? We need to do something differently. What was that moment for you?
George Floyd. I'm gonna don't make me cry.
Yeah.
I'm in Minneapolis.
Right.
The helicopters, and I mean, this was here, right? And I'm not saying that all the others weren't in just as important, but I think it had an impact. And then we had a lot of riots, right? And I was fortunate to have a few of my employees come forward, people of color, who said, Susan, this is a scary time for us. And you've opened up internally about how you feel. You've communicated to us how you feel about George Floyd's murder. Are you willing to go external on it? And I said, yeah, I am, but here's where I'm afraid. If this was a woman's issue, I've got that voice. I've got that voice. And they said, your voice isn't that far from women still suffer from a lot of the same things. It's not exact, but there are balances. So we want to help you have that voice, but are you willing to do it? And I said, I am, but I don't want it to be just a marketing scheme. I don't want to just black out my Twitter for a day or whatever everybody was doing. I said, it has to be sustainable. So I don't want to just flash in the pan. And so I did come out publicly to all of our clients and made a statement. And one of the employees said, what if clients leave us because of this, because of your stand on this? I said, good. I said, but what else are we going to do? During our worst difficult months of revenue, we donated money to Minneapolis to rebuild. We started the Conversations for Change, and that's happening globally in our offices. I said, I'll buy the books, I'll buy whatever, but I want this to start. And we immediately started. It's not done. But this year in our business plan, social responsibility is actually one of the key action items or objectives we have as a company. It used to be a subset. Now it's a pillar. So sorry, I get a little passionate.
No, but that's great. And I appreciate you being so candid about that, because I think so many of us were in that place of wanting to do something, but being scared. Let's just be honest, And as I read White Fragility last year, we had our book club about it. we understood, we named that, and it's called white solidarity. It's like, if I step out and break ranks, even though we don't, we're not going to Klan rallies, but there's still something about saying something that feels like we're stepping out and being vulnerable in a weird way. It's like, well, why? I shouldn't be vulnerable, because this is the right thing to do. So why do I feel so vulnerable? And like, I'm going to be attacked, or like I'm going to lose some, I'm going to lose clients, I'm going to lose my job, I'm going to lose whatever. And I think that's so real. And I think people had to hear that from you. And I applaud you. You've always been courageous. You've always been willing to say things. And that's why you're here. And you've always been out front on moving beyond lip service into how do we take real action. And I want to talk about that also in terms of what we do for our clients. We've got people checking in here. I want to honor some of those questions and comments as well.
And then let me, compose myself.
Yeah, you get a tissue. I'm going to take some questions. Please also leave your comments in here as well. We've got some questions here. We got friends. Look, we always got friends, surrounded by friends. This is great. We've got Goliath checking in from Cleveland.
Oh, well, hi, from David. That's my Goliath. I'm David.
Oh, that's wonderful. You still got to tell me the whole story. You got to tell me. Look at this. We got Catherine checking in. People are ready to be inspired. This is awesome. People told me to hold on, have this conversation with you, like, hold on. I'm like, I don't know what to hold on to. London in here, Switzerland in here.
Wow,
Chris is giving me some backup. Yep. Michael doesn't like the fact that I was calling out his Buffalo Nickels, but it's cool.
Ouch. Don't talk about fried food.
Oh, this is great. Marco checking in. We got a household goods driver here. Be safe out there, Stephen. Let's see here. Simon Hood checking in. Congrats, Simon, by the way. Great topic. The founder of John Mason International was actually a female, Mary Mason, but due to the fact it was 1884, she had to name it after her husband, John.
Nice.
Wow. So interesting. Let's see here.
That was 1884, and I bet the same thing might have happened in 1984, potentially.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Janet says, have you discovered anything new about your teams after having these discussions? Have you had to do any special training? Yeah. Was there an aha moment? Like, we were talking about listening to customers, listening to the clients, which you do a great job of, which maybe we'll get to as well. But when you listen to your staff, was there an aha moment or something that surprised you?
I think it's their willingness to have the conversation. I was really impressed with how many people wanted to attend. Some were quieter than others, and we have to respect that too. This is a process. It's not a waterfall. You can read White Fragility, and I did too. And I was like, see that. But it has to be ongoing, right? So it's the special training. I think the training is happening by having these group leaders around the world help others have conversations and continue to look for new topics, because it's not just, we don't want to just do race. We had read another book when it's how to, I disagree with you, but I'm willing to listen. The LGBTQ, we need to have that conversation. So, raising this stuff up, people ask me, how do you become a diverse company? And I said, I know that a lot of people do metrics and then they meet those metrics. I said, I want to be a place where we have, we're known for it, where people say, oh, come work for Plus. You'll feel included here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great way.
The road, right? That's where when other people tell people you'll feel safe in this environment.
Yeah, and that's something that Valencia talked about as well too.
By the way, I watched and can send Bill Grable a note. Said kudos for that hire. I was almost embarrassed to come on the show after listening to her. If you guys haven't gone back to listen to her, wow! I can't wait to meet her in person. But she was so spot on and so impressive. So I just wanted to give you kudos, and her. I hope someday I meet her. That was solid and great on Grable. Great.
Yeah, for sure. She's tremendous. One of the things that came out of that talk, and one of the things that you've identified that I'm going to actually pull out as an answer to Janet's question too was, I have a feeling you were surprised that you had a role and a voice in this fight, because I think that it sounded like your first impulse was, yeah, but this is what is my voice valid?
Right.
Am I supposed to be out front, or am I supposed to make space for others? And what is my role in this conversation? And one of the things that came out of Valencia and I's talk too, and this is actually after some of these talks, I stay on for an hour after we get off, and we just talk. And she's like, no, Ben, you have a place in this. Yeah. She's like, your voice is extremely valid, because you can talk to white men the way I can't talk to them. Yep. And they needed to be talked to by someone who understands them and understands me, right? And you can intercede in that way. And I look at,
and you have a platform, Ben, of influence that's really important to utilize what you have done in Love and Relo, and use a platform for people to have conversations and dialogue. It's like me, right? So I have a sphere of influence that they're saying, Susan, go use your voice, go use it. Tell people what we're doing. Tell people what's important to us. Tell people what we stand for.
Well, and as you decided, I'm going to come out and be out front on this, externally and internally, you were surprised by how ready your staff were to talk about it, because they were keying off of you, right? And so there was a thing that came out of the George Floyd protests, is white silence is white violence, right? It's like, yeah. But just by making that little change in the way that we move, gives everybody else in our organization's permission to follow, right? And I hope that this show is giving permission to people who are in the comments to have these conversations in their personal lives and professional lives. And I know that it's happened within your four walls as well. So
you have to make it safe without retaliation. It's really
how do you do that? Because I think that's so key for a lot of people, especially, well, it's key for white and Black people in the organization and LGBTQ. Both sides don't feel safe.
I had a conversation. So I've been having a lot of conversations about D&I with companies all over the country. We've been setting up these little sessions where this is all we talk about in their programs. And really, I let them just talk to each other. But one was saying, gosh, we went out and did all these surveys, and then we decided to create all these policies that really address the LGBTQ. And yet they were, when we said, well, how was that for you? They wouldn't respond. And then we found out that they didn't find it to be safe to respond. So that's why I'm saying you have to start with your internal group, whoever that is, and say, how do we make it safe for people to come to us? I think more than ever, mobility has a place to start first, to making it safe, where I can, like, my employees came to me and said, Susan, we're scared right now. This is a terrible time for us, for our families, for our cousins, for our uncles. We're scared. This is a scary time. And made it safe for me to help, because I asked them for help to make it better. And that's what we have to do. We have to make a safe place where people are willing to tell you stuff, and you can't get defensive. You can't. Even if you spent 9 months writing that policy and you just rolled it out globally 2 years ago, and it's just starting to take foothold, and you want to just relish in the fact that you got it done, you can't do that. None of us have a reason not to take this very, very seriously.
I want to talk about policy. Shout out to all the people commenting here. Let's talk about inclusion in policies. Leslie's talking about it's where the rubber meets the road. And Henri from France. Vinny, I appreciate you. I love you so much, man. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Cindy, oh gosh, Cindy's got such a great comment. I'm going to read this, and then I promise we're going to get to this policy question. Cindy says, I was once told in the early 1980s by a man to shut up, go back to my office, and look pretty, because that's what you do best. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow. All right, let's, wow. Cindy, thank you for sharing.
No, and Cindy, there's a whole line of people who could tell that story, Ben. Myself included. Wow. Not for inside my office. Oh, that'd be scary. But externally, I got shot down by a lot of people early on. Even when I was on the board at Worldwide ERC.
Did people not take you seriously? Oh,
Oh no, they did not.
which is hilarious now, by the way, because I feel like you're so like you have like this gravitas like on 10,
But I
I
had
don't.
two barriers because I was the daughter. So
Hmm.
then it was, oh look, that daughter got that role. I had to earn
Hmm.
it from that side. That I didn't just, I mean, I worked hard, but it wasn't just handed to me as, okay, you're next in line. That's not what it was. And then externally, there was so much pride for my parents. A lot of the people who knew my parents supported me, but then there was this other camp that said, well, oh, isn't she cute? That's fun.
Hmm.
That's cute of her. There was a lot of
How
that.
how did you muster the grit, the courage to push through the BS? And I mean, because some people don't. How did you do that? Where did that come from
Well,
for
and I
you?
don't want to say everybody because there were some people that really guided my way, and I can't thank them enough for what they did to help me to get here. Men and women both. Um, you know what? I got to a point where I turned the narrative in my head. I said, you know what? Let them dismiss you, especially when I was in sales. Go ahead, dismiss me. Because then when I steal that and get that business, you're going to wonder how I did because you never saw me coming because you never planned for me. You just pushed me off to the side and said, well, I don't know who Plus is. I don't know who Susan is. Or, I've been told things like, oh, she just comes up with crazy ideas and then wants to, I mean, I've heard everything.
You've heard it all. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I like how you made that. I like how in a way you've made that a strength, right? It's like
Yep.
underestimate me because then you'll
Oh,
you
yeah.
always have the element of surprise.
Because usually you're looking at your competitors saying, okay, how should we compete against them? They were
Right.
just pushing me to the side. And I was like, okay, watch out.
I love it. Oh my gosh, you're so inspiring. Honestly, it's everybody. Erica, hello, Susan, Ohio, checking in. Jamie, Jenny Holler checking in. Ray Abbott from Vancouver. This is fantastic. Francine, I totally get where you're coming from. Susan, I worked for my dad growing up, and as a young adult, they told me to sit down and look pretty and get my dad. Oh my
Oh,
gosh. Oh my
I
gosh.
know.
This is Hosea checking in. Hello, Susan and Ben. What's up, Hosea? Janet sharing the same story when she was in sales as Cindy. Oh my gosh. Um, Jackie says that's the cost of doing business in the 80s.
Yeah, when we
Um,
had to I remember wearing nylons and heels when I was not the day I gave birth in a presentation back when those days. That's how we had to dress in the office. 9 months pregnant. No, trust me, several people will know that one.
oh my gosh. That's crazy. Now we're all wearing sweatpants all the time. It's
Oh,
totally
no, I
cool.
might have shorts on for right now. No, I live in
That's great.
Minneapolis.
That's great. Okay. So keep the
Back
questions
to the
coming,
program.
everybody. Yeah. Okay. Well, and this is all part of the program, right? And it's
I
and
mean,
it's
back to the policies because I
yeah.
do
Let's
have
talk
a
about
lot of.
policies because I know you're doing a lot with your clients. So you worked on it internally, and now it's like okay, let's also work on it externally as a subject matter expert for your clients. How are you advising them? I want to talk about policy. I want to talk about program, and I want to riff on procurement a little bit, because that's a something a
Okay.
passion for me. So how are you talking about DE and I and policies? Can you give us some like specifics, if possible?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things I think that most policies are not inclusive. I think
Really?
that I think that that when you define somebody as a homeowner or a renter, a single or a family, Let,
Hmm.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day. We were talking about, renters get less benefits, right? And homeowners get better benefits. And then they keep the home ownership going, right? So what if we looked at minorities and disadvantaged people? Maybe there's a reason they're not a homeowner. And now you don't give them home purchase benefits because, you are a renter and maybe they're caught in a system that doesn't allow them to. What I want to
Oh
know
my
is people
gosh.
who are giving lump sums and not asking if there is a potential physical disability that would allow them not or would cause them not to be able to physically move, but you don't get household goods because you're not in a high enough level. So I understand you're physically impaired, but we don't really care because your grade level is an S2 4. I'm making stuff up.
Right.
Where are we not thinking about this? where are we not thinking about families today that have a different dynamic? We just went through a considerable opioid crisis in this country, right? There are a lot of grandparents who are now raising their grandchildren, but they're not necessarily dependents. But let's say they're going to move with them, and then but we don't count them dependents because that's not really why aren't we opening this up? Why are we not allowing benefits to people at all levels? So I'm saying I'm done with policies. Policies are done. You've got to give people choice, and you've got to give them control and care. We've done a lot of research. You know that I've spent years hiring external research about what employees want. The voice of the customer, not necessarily the voice of the mobility team, but we had to go to the voice of the customer. They want choice, they want control, and they want care. And during this COVID, if there's not one thing we've learned is people want care differently. There are people who are scared. They're relying on the supply chain. They're looking to their employer to say, make me safe. Does a $15,000 lump sum show that you care about me?
I say it absolutely does not. I say duty of don't care. When you give somebody a $15,000 lump sum, but don't get me started because I'm the anti-lump sum mafia over here.
No, but I get that it had a place, but are there people who've got issues or family dynamics, multiple families? Why?
Let me go here because when somebody says lump sum or they say give me the cash, that tells me as a relocation industry, we are failing that transfer or failing the corporation or both, right? They're basically saying, I would rather have money than the value that you are offering, which means that the value that you're giving me is less than the dollar I'm giving you.
But I will tell you that they do want some cash. And it's cash. So we've actually watched this, right? So we've got employees want both. They do want some cash. So we've done this all or nothing thing, right? And a lump sum is often, or even the miscellaneous allowance, 1 month's salary or whatever, is more than they want. They want on average about $1,500. And you know what they do? So we went out and said, okay, when the people are taking the cash, because we have a concept that allows people choice, control, and care, and they have access to all benefits. They can use it how they want. But our research in it showed us that when we asked them, what'd you use the cash for when you took out that cash amount? I used it to, I decided to do 2 household goods and the company would only pay for one. So I used, because during COVID, I decided to move closer to my family for a while and my office hasn't decided when they're opening and I want to be there. Oh, that's not okay. Okay. Or we get people who say, well, I used it to pay the contractor on my kitchen renewal before I sold the house. Okay, that works. That is, I think people are afraid that if they take the miscellaneous allowance, they're going on trips. And the reality is when we did the research, they are doing it for legitimate reasons. They're buying hard-sided suitcases for their guitars. That's a reload thing, but they don't want all miscellaneous allowance. In fact, only about 7% of the people want a full miscellaneous allowance. The others want some help in other areas.
Yeah, I mean, the story we tell ourselves, right, is that they go and buy a big screen television or a new Xbox.
You make them out to be greedy, absent-minded.
Absent-minded millennials. A lot of times it's a millennial stereotype too, right, where they're just making frivolous purchases.
We've made that generalization forever. And the reality is executives want cash too, by the way. And so especially if you're offering only like these 8 to 10 benefits that we've offered for decades, I mean, the reality is we have a system point C, you've heard about it. We have 60 different benefits in there that they can choose from and they get credits and they can say, well, this is important to me, so I'm going to use it. We had somebody, hurt their back and said, I need a household good shipment. I'm using all my credits for it.
That's so interesting. I want to hear more about that too from a program standpoint, because I think that kind of addresses the second thing.
It leads to the diversity, equity, inclusion, because now we're not labeling you. We're not saying you're a renter or homeowner. You might get different credits based on your level, but we're not saying you can't move your family, you can't move your dependents, you can't move all these things. We have to have all these policing stereotypes in here. So that's what my point was on the inclusivity.
Yeah, and there's so much measuring of everything that's outside of policy and limiting exceptions. I mean, limiting exceptions has been a thing forever. And really what we're doing is we're limiting the ability of the benefit to be flexible and actually adapt to the person's unique situation. So it's
And
like,
when you allow them to choose, they make good choices and you don't have exceptions. And by the way, one of the challenges I've asked people on a DE&I perspective is if you were to look at all the exceptions you approved or denied over the last 24 months from a DE&I perspective, how would you fare?
yeah, what is the demography of your exception approval and
Yep. And then if you
disapproval
look at your
rating?
senior leadership, does it fall in line? Does it? So true companies who are taking this seriously are asking their DE&I group to come in and spend time with them, to look at their policies, to look at their processes and say, what lens do we need to put on so that if I was audited from a DE&I perspective based on exceptions denied or granted, how can I ensure that I am doing this with the right lens? If you haven't asked yourself that question, you can't just say, well, we're fine. I know we are.
How scary is that for global mobility managers who are
I
watching
know.
this
Am I
right
getting
now
really bad? I can't
to
see
be
comments.
like,
Am I
hey,
getting bad comments now?
hey, yeah, everybody hates you. Hey, DE and I, can you come over here and audit my program real quick? Like, that's like, I feel like that's like the worst phone call you probably want to make, you know, if you're a global mobility manager. But we have to lean into these conversations if we're ever going to truly move the needle, right? We're not going to figure it out on our own because I mean, it's our best thinking that got us here, right? So it's like, we got to rethink. We've got some comments here. No, nobody hates you. Are you kidding me? Ben Heller, wow, only 7% of lump sum transferees want purely cash. That's a pretty awesome data point. What's up, Ben? Good to see you. Bridget Ritchie, Point C is a phenomenal program of offerings. I want to hear more about this and how it came about. Let's get to some comments real quick though first, and then I promise we're going to get back.
I want to know about the inclusivity.
Yeah, please leave your questions and your comments right now as opposed as it pertains to DE&I and any questions you have about policies or even just stuff you've seen, you know.
Yeah, or if people are talking to their DE&I counterparts within their organization. I mean, that's, I think, the first start.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I'd love to hear your thoughts on from like an insurance and a corporate housing standpoint. That's Elizabeth Bailiwick at Jacob Street Partners. Jim says, I care about lump sum transfers for what it's worth. Hey, Jim. Good to see you, buddy. Hosea, wow, this is great to hear. Yeah. And you know what else I love about the way you describe it too, Susan, is you bring like real world examples and anecdotes to the table that actually tell the story in a way where you're like, you know, the one that really resonates with me, and we've done a lot of work with highlighting disabled persons, and just because they're one of the people that really gets lost in the shuffle from a DE&I standpoint. And when you talk about how you may not have a household goods benefit, but you may have a disability.
Yeah.
I mean, doesn't that just hit you at the core? And you're like, how can we not offer these people something?
And here's the thing that I find people become mobility managers because they like people and they want to help people and they care. And I think they've been put under constraints around cost containment or the way it's always been. And it's been really hard for them to get back. I don't think they want to just say lump sum. Jack Gemple wants to help the person who's got a disability. I know that. Anybody who knows Jack knows that. But a lot of these mobility programs have been constrained. And what I'm saying is take these real life examples, and if it kind of hurts the people and makes them get a little jittery, here's what I always say. You know, if change doesn't make people angry, then it's not really change. It's just change.
I love it. If this doesn't make you angry, then I'm not.
No, but I think mobility people, they don't want to be in there figuring out who should process the next lump sum and what to give. They're there because they care about people who are moving, and moving is the third most stressful thing in your life next to death and divorce. That's why they became mobility managers. Now, they might have landed in it, but that's why they stay in it. That's why they care.
Well, let me ask you though, and shout out to Elena here checking in, always an ally in these discussions. But have global mobility managers gotten a little far away from the actual transferee experience? You know, they're writing the policy, but then they utilize RMCs to administer and they utilize their suppliers. And a lot of times they don't get involved until there's an escalation where it's a supplier problem. But I mean, are there issues? I mean, is that part of it, or is that just well,
So surveys aren't the voice of the customer. Let me just be honest there. And, we've done a lot of certification in our company with an organization called COPC, which is really about optimizing customer service.
I
And
shout out to COPC, by the way. I was COPC trained. Judy Bloom, Peter Bloom, and Judy Berenstein, and I don't know, Leslie Harrell, and all those.
yeah,
Yeah,
COPC is serious, right? And they will tell
serious,
you
real
that
deal.
surveys are kind of and most SLAs are a waste of time because they're not measuring the right things. I really got my eyes open when we decided to go to the voice of the customer and do, we did over 2,000 quantitative surveys, and we did, deep dive qualitative interviews. But in these surveys, we said, what did you want that we didn't give you? You know what the number one thing renters want?
What?
Their apartments cleaned before they
Mm.
move. It's cheap. We don't know.
$150, $100,
People are offering it now, right? They want their apartments clean. But you have to ask them the why. The real voice of the customer is not yes or no. Did they do a good job? Were they on time? We're measuring the wrong things, but we're also not surveying. You have to ask the customer, what did you want that I did not give you? It's those hard questions. And sometimes for mobility, that's a scary place, especially if you've written all these policies and it took you 9 months to get them approved. And now you put them globally. You don't want to open that can of worms again. But the reality is when you ask an employee, why did you want that? Because you assume, okay, you're lazy. You don't like to clean.
Yeah.
They said, because I know I'm not going to get paid for 6 weeks before this starts, and I need my security deposit back.
Yeah.
See, that's a customer.
Which is a procedural issue within the company, it's a payroll issue or whatever too.
It's like, is what it is.
Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah. Interesting. So fascinating. Yeah. A lot of times they'll say, well, you're just lazy. We're not going to pay you not to clean your apartment. You can do
And
it
it's such a
yourself.
cheap, inexpensive benefit, but people are like, that's too hard.
$200 max. Victoria McCullough, my former client gave a lump sum MEA and real benefits to most employees, and yet there were many who still asked for exceptions. Many pocketed the funds as they may not have gone into temp living or taken a formal house hunting trip. Then if you ask for an accounting of the funds, they'd get upset.
Yep. So it was really interesting because we had a group of people during COVID in the beginning that were in Point C. And then we had a group of people we looked at them side by side that were in a traditional program. And it was interesting because in Point C, where, they get access to all these benefits, very few temp lodging, it depends on what it is, but they had control of what they could do, and they didn't stay in there forever. They actually said, I'm going to get going, but they had action. They could, get for a lease deposit, or they could use it to buy a down payment on a home. They could do a lot of things versus some of the people I think felt like they got stuck. And then the companies are like, gosh, how long do we extend this? And then it becomes this thing where you're questioning the employee, and it just becomes a really kind of difficult point. So, these traditional benefits are still very important, but you've got to let the employee decide, especially when they get down to the granular, like, well, you can only have a 2-bedroom. But if you're an executive, I'll give you a 3-bedroom because you want one for the 2 cats. And everybody knows these stories. These are all legit stuff.
Yeah. So let me ask you, so you talked about Point C a couple times. Tell everybody who doesn't know, I want to hear the story. How did you, what is it? But maybe even more importantly, what was the road that got you there?
Yeah. And I don't want to make this into an infomercial. Okay. So, but we're talking about D&I, and it addresses it. That was one of the byproducts we didn't set out to do. So essentially, and I can use it was with Capital One, who's a great partner to us, and they wanted to transform the industry. They wanted to transform their program. They said, we want digital forward, we want improved employee experience, and we never want to have an exception again. So what we did was you took a step back and said, why do exceptions exist? Oh, because people aren't getting what they want. So then we hired an external design thinking firm and said, go out and see what the voice of the customer is. They're the ones who brought back all this data. And they said, employees want choice, control, and care. And they want benefits you're not offering. And so we kept asking, what else do you want? What else do you want? Did I ever think there would be a day in my life where in our supply chain, we would have mattress companies? Nope. But employees want mattresses. You know why? Because they don't want to move them because they're expensive. So it's
Yeah.
really just giving them, and Capital One's been live in this program for well over a year and a half. And guess what? They haven't had an exception.
People are going to find that hard to believe.
Yep.
I find
And
that
you
hard to
can
believe.
call them, and I have all the data points to show you. But I'm telling you, when you give employees the choice, think about it. If I give you airline gift miles, but then I would tell you, oh, you have to decide. Here's your policy. You can only fly on this day. You can't do this day. But if you can do miles or cash, and you decide, but all of a sudden those miles become very important to you, don't they? That's your currency. When you get, Point C is a credit-based program. So employees get credits. And the company says, here's the investment. We turn it into credits. Let's say I give you 500 credits. You get to go in and look at all these benefits, and you get to pick them, and you can change your mind. You have a year to use it, because that's the other thing. Even in some of these Core Flex programs, let's say you do Core Flex, yay, and then I buy a dog right before I move. It's not a Core Flex. It's not a Core Flex. So no, it's not, because you try putting 60 different benefits into a Core Flex. People get confused by it, and I don't want to get into a commercial, but the point is,
No, it's fine. I mean, I love the detailed
so
stuff, because we have a bunch of practitioners here who
let's
actually
say,
get off this stuff.
I'm moving, I've got all my credits, I have a year to use them. Maybe I get some cash in the beginning because I need some cash. And then maybe I need to buy a mattress. Oh, I'm a renter, but interest rates are low. So I'm going to put a number in here and use that for part of my down payment or my closing costs. You mean I can do that? Yeah, because you have access to benefits. Do you want a full shipment? Do you want a VIP shipment? Do you need some boxes? Things like that. So we really looked at it and said, do you want a down payment for a gym membership? You can do a Core Flex, but it ends up to be massive. A Core Flex says you have to use these benefits. But what we learned, what the benefit was for us, everything became taxable as we were building this platform. So it doesn't matter anymore where they use their benefits. It's a little different on the international side, so somebody will jump in on that. But a Core Flex was meant because you wanted them to use the excludable items first.
Yeah. Core flexes. There's items that are core, and then there's items you can kind of choose from. There's
And
also
then who's
cafeteria
deciding
style.
what core is? Who's
Yeah.
deciding what core is?
Somebody is. I had this conversation with a very large program today, and they were like, yeah, this corporate housing is part of our core, and
Right.
it was like, oh, good
What if
to
they don't need
hear.
it?
Good to hear, but you're right. If they don't need it, or to Victoria's point, if I want to stay with family or friends or what have you, and
Or if I
then
want 2 units because I'm putting my teenage kids in one. I mean, if I want 2 household goods because of COVID, people are unique and they all have difference. And I think it's wrong for us also to make them dig into their story and tell us stuff that maybe we shouldn't be asking. If, we had a group where they have multiple wives, it's not up to us to decide what the policy says. We don't say who's wife number 1 and who's wife number 3. It's not fair, but you shouldn't also ask. It's none of your business.
Any situation where you ask a question and then you hold the answer against the employee, it's like automatically that is not an inclusive situation right there.
And what if you're going on a short-term assignment, you want to bring your mom, not your spouse, because they can't leave their job? Why is that not okay? Is it really for you to decide? If I had a spouse, you'd do it, but why won't you just, what's the point?
Let's see what these comments are coming in, because I don't think everybody agrees with you, which I totally love, because then it gets a lot more interesting, right? Let's see here. Do you ever get tired of people just agreeing with you when you're like, as the queen? Like, I've never been the queen, but as the queen, do you ever get tired of
queen. Disagreeing is good, because this is where we bring up and we find common ground, or we find a different perspective. I'm okay with people disagreeing with me.
All right. Well, let's see. So Farrell says, I might argue that about number one thing renters want. Farrell, what is it? What do you think it is?
Well, that's where we learned that's what the research said. So they came back. So I wouldn't have guessed that. And 2,000 people answered that quantitative survey.
And are there situations where people don't necessarily know what they want. I think about the Steve Jobs. People don't know what they want until we show them the iPhone. I think about the old sales quip, buyers are liars. I mean, I think about the
Ask
fact that people
them what
say,
they want, and they'll tell you. They didn't say, "I want my final move trip reimbursed, please." They don't even know what that is. I mean, they ask. So that's fine. That's what the data showed us. What they want isn't necessarily what we're giving them.
I think it's a hell of a good place to start, asking people what they want and making
I
data
was shocked.
uh,
I'm like, really?
decisions. Let's see what Elizabeth says. I think from a risk management perspective, it's important to bake in the coverage and make it something that people don't have to think about. Relocation is so complex. They should have to think about sourcing insurance when they are in temp housing or moving to an international location. It provides coverage for the executives and the low-level new hires and protects the transferee and the corporation.
Yeah, interesting from a point C perspective, there are things we call above the line, right? Tax, compliance, immigration, a home sale program. If this was something that a company said we really need to have that, you could make it into it, or you could put it above the line.
Duty of care and risk, I'm sure, are above the line, table stakes kinds of things. Q. Post-move surveys are too late. What are you doing before and during to create the good after score? Spot on.
That's exactly it.
Sue and Q. Don't take over the podcast scene. So what do you think about pre and during surveys?
I think mid-move surveys are more important than anything. I think you've got to get them when they're in the midst of it and find out what they're feeling. But I think we have to ask different questions, like, not how was this, how was this. We kind of do it based on SLAs and not really asking about the experience. And if you really want to do it, and I would tell you that surveys are one, but qualitative interviews are really important. So, and whenever you do something, you've got to say, okay, here's the group we're going to look at. Do 8 to 10 qualitative deep dive interviews, we have a full learning agenda that we know exactly what we're asking them and it's consistent.
Love it. Oh gosh, some of these comments. The comments always get good at the end. What's up, people? I need these comments earlier. Tom Bruin, specific to DE&I saw a breakout session moderated by Laura Levinson several years ago. I was surprised at how many people who consider themselves to be open-minded, including yours truly, don't consider relocation benefits through the lens of protected class situations, e.g., veteran status, disability, age, not to mention those who have had more of the spotlight of late. We all have work to do? I mean, is that how you'd sum that up?
Yeah, Tom, this is, what, but look at him, including yours truly. He's already saying, I'm self-aware. I want to learn. That's what we all have to do with our programs, just as individuals in any corporate setting.
Yeah, there's a real opportunity, by the way, for you white guys out there, like myself, to be part of the solution. This conversation feels a whole lot different when you're part of the solution. Trust me on that. Elena, most programs are built from a cost containment or a risk management lens and not from the employee experience DE&I lens, which involves a different mindset and level of investment. How can smaller organizations make positive changes that are still sustainable?
Positive changes to their program, I assume she's saying. I think, again, first of all, I think baby steps are important. I think taking a step back and knowing that you can't, boil the ocean. I think you can say, what are some small things we can impact? And again, I would go out and make sure that you're coming at it from the right lens. I know there's cost management, but there are some things where you're saying, are we labeling people? Even just kind of looking at how we define people as families or singles or homeowners or renters, it feels really stereotypical to me. And I think you can also just say, make a safe place where they're able to say what's most important to you in your move, and building out a program, allowing them to have some choice, but also, again, looking at it from a DE&I lens. It's a lot of this, I hate to say, needs to start from the leadership of the organization and work its way down. Thankfully, companies are getting traction in there finally. And I think they really want to see metrics and ways that you're doing it, but it's going out and listening to those who, fit in the D&I category, or don't, and say, does this make you feel awkward or not inclusive? Asking some basic questions like that. I think it's very sustainable. And as you grow, it's what a great time to do it because you can build off of it and make it better. It's not overnight.
Yeah, I mean, there's definite rub in that, right? I mean, because the other side of it is, okay, let's just do whatever it takes to get the person there happily and wholly. Well, okay, gosh knows what that invoice is going to look like. But maybe you do that for 6 months to a year, and then you see what that invoice looks
You
like.
can put some limits around. You can create cost containment. You could say, this is the investment I want to make. Here are the choices I'm really willing to give the employee under that. Maybe they can only pick 5 things. Maybe somebody else can pick 10, but at least they got what they wanted.
Yeah. Tom's making a good point about being an employer of choice and looking at how mobility impacts our employment brand. I think that was actually, you touched on that in a different way as far as DE&I goes. This is great. Let's see. Jack says, Susan, I'm a strong supporter of full service and I love your approach on benefits. However, if Relo managers use the noise test, as many do, then it's difficult to change programs if there is no or low noise.
Yeah. I mean, if you're running a program where there's no noise, the employee experience is off the charts and you have 0 exceptions, uh, then you're right. I mean, I think that the noise test, sometimes they only make the noise when there, but asking them again the questions, and that I love full service. By the way, even in a point C world, they want their counselors more than ever. They might engage with them differently, but they look at them as advocates, not policing. So I think some of it is just, maybe there's no need to change, but going out to the voice of the customer and saying, if there's something we could give you and we had all these other benefits to offer, would you have picked some of them? It's interesting to see what they would do. Throw things in there you would have never thought you'd offer.
I would also say, Jack, and I love you, Jack, but I would say that the noise test is not indicative because, my wife not speaking to me is not a good indication of how our relationship's going. Okay. All right. So I think if we just assume because my wife, that would have been a first. That if I could have got you to a spit take on Love Real, that would have been a first. So yeah, I think we have to be proactive and ask people. This is awesome. I'm gonna ask you, Susan, and I know this is a touch out of your bailiwick, but I'm gonna ask you. We talked about DE&I from a policy standpoint. We've talked about it from programmatically how we make changes and how we deliver service differently to achieve different results. But I want to ask about from a procurement standpoint because this is something near and dear to my heart. I represent several companies that are owned by women and they're Black-owned businesses, and I can't help but think when I looked around last month for Black History Month, and I wanted to really showcase people of color in this space. There was a real shortage of folks. There was actually a decent amount of representation on the corporate side, less so on the RMC side, and then even less so from like a business ownership and entrepreneurial standpoint. And when I think about the E and DE&I and equity, right, and moving people from entrepreneurs to from employees to entrepreneurs, I guess I just wonder, and I was talking to a client earlier today who was part of the $1 billion roundtable. $1 billion roundtable being an initiative with all these companies, Walmart and Honda and just a million companies that not a million, but a bunch who are saying we're committed to spending $1 billion a year with diverse suppliers. What are your thoughts, if any, on how maybe we can change the way that our services are procured or ways that we can move from lip service to actual action in our supply chains? Do you have any thoughts at all on it? I mean,
it's so interesting because one of the things that I think can be challenging is just the process you have to go through to get certified why do we have to have that label? So for example, I'm the CEO, but we're not a certified women-owned business. So when they ask the question, I say no, but over 50% of my executive staff is.
Mm-hmm.
And we never did it, and I've also seen people use it in where clearly it's run by someone and then they put it in the wife's name and then all of a sudden I don't like that either. But here's what I think. I think that we need to create a space and a showcase for minority supply chain in our industry. We owe them that. I want to know, to raise them up to say, who are these people? Where are we showcasing them? Where are we allowing them? Not the ones that have just always been the biggest. We need to showcase in all areas, whether it's an RMC, a supplier, temporary housing. Where are we giving them a lift to say, here is a showcase of a minority business in our industry? Get to know them.
Yeah.
Get to know them and find out who they are. Get to know them. And it's hard too. If you're new, it's hard to spend a lot of money to get a lot of traction. How are we here, Ben? Your show's a good example. Take a week a month to showcase minority supply chain.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we do.
Female entrepreneurs or people of color, do that. But showcase them, especially if they're just starting out. And if they made it through a pandemic, my gosh, they're going to make it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you described when you kind of came up in this business, right, and how you were brushed off, even though you kind of had it in your blood, right, and you were kind of brought up in the business, and I think about all these minority entrepreneurs or disadvantaged businesses, diverse businesses, and it's hard, to your point, to get the years and years of experience necessary to build the relationships and start moving in circles and to kind of be thought of when RFPs come out and kind of network and run in the right circles. I mean, it's really hard, especially when these are white spaces. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, Worldwide ERC, love it. It's a white space. I mean, all the Black professionals that came on last month talked about being the only, one of the only Black faces in the room, being a couple, being able to count on one hand, right? How many other folks look like them in the room of hundreds. And so I think we underestimate the challenge presented by that, and sometimes the message that it sends. But I think the things that you're doing are fantastic about having those conversations. And I wanted to
finding out who they are and taking my 30 years of experience and saying, who do I need to introduce you to?
And that's one of the things.
That's how you do it. We lift up.
100%. Jose Abatley here. A great example. Jose. President, CEO of Universal Global Relocation. Thank you, Susan, for having a voice for the minority companies. Awesome. Does great work. Rima, love that thought. They didn't know you were coming. Talking about when you got in, that was priceless. The spit take, I think she's referring to.
Oh, yeah. that almost was ugly.
Amanda has a suggestion: create a Facebook and LinkedIn group.
Yeah, I think that's great. And for sure a LinkedIn group, but create a supply chain in our ERC. Our associations need to do it. Showcase, thank you. Let's get it done. I don't know how to figure it out. Let's figure it out. I'm in, but here's the thing. Okay, here's what I'll say. I'm going to speak on behalf of some minority companies that I actually represent. I think it's also a demand problem, right? Yes, there's a shortage of supply, but it's also a demand problem. I'm not sure that companies have felt the lift and success that maybe they felt with the $1 billion roundtable, where they get in with a Honda or GE or Walmart or whatever, and all of a sudden their business takes off. If there is a demand, if there were RMCs who were out there and who were sourcing for diversity and actually included it in their sourcing strategy and not just how we respond to RFPs. It's challenging when corporations say, well, I like my provider, and so I don't want you adding other providers. And it's hard in a pandemic. You actually got me thinking about a lot of things. One of the challenges that I know, even, when I took over as president at Plus, we were, 45, 50 people maybe. We weren't global, we were small. And you know what I learned is in our industry, if you're small, somehow you are incapable, not successful. I'll come up with a lot of other reasons. Oh, you don't have a global footprint. You can't do the job. Oh, how many employees do you have? What's interesting is I remember when Snapchat was at their highest and somebody said, oh, you should do their Relo business. And somebody said, they have like 80 employees. Okay. And I sat back and I said, since when did the amount of employees you have determine your capability? Because everybody's worried you won't be able to scale. Can't you carve out a piece of business that this is just good for? I don't know. That was a challenge for me. Everybody said, you're too small. I'm like, well, if I'm too small, how do I get business? And
How do I get bigger? Yeah. How do I get bigger?
Sometime I just turned around and said, maybe I'm more efficient because I actually use technology all over the place. I like automation. Maybe it's possible I'm more efficient, but why are we need to give a voice to these minorities. We need to showcase them, and we need to quit saying I have a big program, therefore you're too small to deal with me. You haven't been in business enough. You're new to mobility. We need other people like us to grab their hand and say, come along with me. And I don't know. I don't have the answers, but
No, but that's what I wanted to hear, honestly, Susan. That's what I wanted to hear, is that people recognize the paradox that is, you're not big enough, therefore I can't give you business, which means you'll never be big enough. Questions like, how many clients do you currently have? How many moves do you currently do? All these things that assess your size.
How many expenses have you done in Chad, Africa? I'm like, you're obviously not looking for me when I know how many invoices I paid in Chad.
Yeah. Michael, Felia says, as a small business, I agree with you, Susan. Don't judge a company by its size.
He's got a great business.
I love it.
And family owned.
Yeah. Elena's all on board with the showcase for minority owned businesses. Elena, my commitment is we will do something like that. My question to you, Susan, is just like the $1 billion roundtable, which is a commitment by these large Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies to spend $1 billion with minority companies. Is there an equivalent that we could do in mobility where folks come together and say, obviously it's not going to be $1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 million, $2 million.
Yes. Bob, Rosine, you're on this call. I saw you earlier. You and Peggy and I and Bill Gray will have a call this week. We should just knock this round, brainstorm a little bit about what that looks like in our industry.
I would love that. Wow. You heard it here first. Breaking news. They're going to talk about it.
He's going to be like, what'd you do about that? I'm like, I don't know. It's still in my head, percolating.
This is great. Erica says, kudos, Susan. Your voice matters.
Thank you, Erica.
Jennifer Rodriguez, love that small companies are just as good, if not better, than large companies. That's great. Leslie says, the irony is that the privilege must lead. The system is weighted against women and minorities. Awesome. Victoria, you agree 100% on your minority stance. I say the same thing in regards to giving a hand to help them succeed. Yes. Awesome. Susan, you've inspired so many people. You've inspired me. But it is Women's Month.
Yeah.
Okay. And you're a talker. I'm a talker. We're over time, but I don't care.
I know we're way over time, but
I don't care.
Do the top 5, right?
We got to do your top 5. All right, let's roll. Let's run through it. Top 5. What's your top 5, Susan?
I can't remember what I said.
It's right there. It's on the screen.
Top 5 ways for women to build their brand.
I love it. And you're the best person to talk about this. All right, number 5.
Know your strengths. So women out there, and I would say this to men too. Brand doesn't just be men, but women. So one of the things I was fortunate to get early on, and in our company too, is the Gallup Strengths. Knowing my strengths, knowing what I'm good at, what I like to do every day, and on the flip side, knowing where my strength isn't. So like one of my strengths, I've got strategic and activator and belief and communication and arranger. I always knew communication was in there. How do I tap into that? Doing things like this. But even the opposite, like activator is one of my strengths, which means I'm impatient. That's why I'm already saying, oh, let's figure out how to do this thing. And then I've got to have people around me that balance me. So know your strengths, but we don't like to say weaknesses, but know the dark side of your strength, which is often that. Surround yourself with people who make up the difference.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Number 4.
Know your true passion. You can't be passionate about everything. And know what you really want to stand for and what you're after. We talked the mobility people, right? You're in this business, go fight for it. Know your true passion. If your true passion is connecting with people, then don't take the job that's it has a higher title and a higher pay. I don't think you're going to be happy. make everything in the job you have, but know your true passion. But you can't be passionate about absolutely everything, because, you know, you can make differences in the world, but usually it has to take some focus.
I love how it kind of contradicts number 5 about being all over the place and now focusing your passion
Yeah.
on a couple of things. I love it. I love it. Number 3.
Never stop learning from anyone or anywhere. You know, some people often say to me, "Oh, I don't feel like I'm really learning or developing." You know, employees want the L&D. That's why we have learning and development. Gosh, I kind of learn and develop all the way. I mean, I mentioned Bob Rosen before. He's been a huge advocate for me in the marketplace. Even when he was the worst competitor in the world, Goliath, I was David. You know, I had to come after him, but I got to know him, and he has guided me. Learn, get a mentor.
Love it. Number
Decide
2.
what you want to learn from. Make sure the mentor kind of has something in you. Look for people who have what you want to be. Who do you want to be when you grow up? And then don't stop learning anywhere. Take it from anyone. I learn all the time. I'm learning on this show today, just with the questions people ask. You know, take in that information, but don't stop. Don't turn around and say, "Well, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know everything." Stop. Learn from anyone. Learn from the voice of your customers, everybody. They have a different story to tell, maybe.
I love it. You stop learning, you stop growing, you die.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I love it. I love it. Number 2.
Own your voice. So you asked me a question earlier, like, I have a really strong voice. Have I always had it? I am positive I did. And my mother would be here saying, "Yes, you did, dear." I'm not afraid to share it, but own your voice. And by that, you need to ask, especially women, you need to ask for what you want, and not in a way that's passive aggressive. You know, I used to say, if you don't ask for it, don't expect it. And don't expect it just because you asked for it.
Ooh.
But own your voice. My voice is, you know, one of the things people say to me often is, "I never worry about how you feel because I know you're going to tell me." And that's very freeing. If
Do
I'm
we
irritated with you, I'm going to tell you. So
you just scared me, Susan.
I know, I know. But then
I felt like that was a veiled threat.
own your voice, but don't try to have a voice in everything, right? There are things this DE and I'm very passionate about this right now. But in certain areas, I'm like, I'm not, you might want me on that panel. I don't know that. That's not my voice. But own your voice. And for women in business, that's always been something that's really important to me.
You talked about your mom would vouch for the fact you've always had a voice, and do we sometimes as a society, um what's the right word,
Shut down people with a voice. Oh, yeah.
yeah, do we train it out of our kids,
So
you know, especially women?
I was always too talkative, too disruptive. I think my desk was next to the teacher's desk most years, if not in the hall. And sometimes they put
Same.
me back in the closet. You know, was there a way to kind of tame that in? Probably. In fact, I finally had a teacher who said, "You're bored, so I'm going to have you go read to kindergartners," which was smart. But you know, I think the voice takes a while um, to mature. There's
Yeah.
probably things I said early on that I was to look back. So you need to own your voice. But in the comment I made before, learn from anyone and anywhere. You need to have people validate what you're saying or to criticize. You need to have a circle around you that says, "Ooh, yeah, you did not deliver that message well." Or, "I'm not understanding what your passion's really about here, Susan. You seem to be saying one thing and then you're saying another."
Yeah, so as I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I feel like so oftentimes I'm focused on compliance. My wife and I are just trying to get them to like do the right thing or listen or not be disruptive. We're always kind of like compliance, 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 and maybe at the sacrifice of creativity, of courage, of finding themselves, of whatever. And I'm just wondering, as a parent, as a man in business who wants to be an ally, as a person with a platform, do we overstress compliance with our kids, and is it especially a problem with our girls?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, there's so many studies about how people treat their sons versus their daughters, right? The daughters are always too emotional. We really shoot that down. Being emotional, look at me, it created passion. It's what I really am. I'm really passionate. And, I always tell people passion has two sides. It's got a dark side and it's got a really fun side. And so, if I'm upset, you're going to know if I'm upset. If I'm happy, you're going to know I'm happy. Um, but I do think there is some of that. I've watched women in business too, getting that feedback of constructive feedback from someone they don't trust as a manager. It's really hard. But own your voice but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, that it's not just to benefit yourself. I know we're talking about brand. People know I love outreach. I have a very loud voice when it comes to giving back to the community. No, people know that about me. I don't say one thing and do another.
Just a couple of comments really quick. Erica, huge support here. Bridget says, amen to owning your own voice, especially as a female. One of my favorite sayings is, I know what I bring to the table, so trust me when I tell you I'm not afraid to eat alone. Own what you say and do it, even if it's unpopular.
Yeah.
Elizabeth loves
If
that as
people
well.
aren't getting mad, you're not changing things. And then the final one, final.
Number one.
Lift other women up, please. I think sometimes women are the worst. Don't help other women to succeed. When people say to me, "Oh, I was so afraid of you when I first met you," I'm like, "Why would you say that to me? Would you say that to a man? Well, you're just so intimidating." I'm like, "Am I? Is that fair to say?"
I said it like 5 minutes ago, but yeah, no, I dig what you're saying.
Women have to lift. When we see other women succeeding in our business, we need to lift them up. We need to lift women. Women need to lift women up. Sheryl Sandberg talks a lot about this in her book, but women are sometimes the biggest critics of other women. And I think it's because we're jealous. We feel insecure because of all these things that you're saying about what people said in the past, who put you in a box and told you you're not a strong enough woman or get in the corner and look pretty. It's really hard to hold other women up when we've been hurt. And women need to say, no, I'm holding you up. I get on this. I sent Bill Grable a note and say, you had the greatest hire in Valencia. I was amazed by her. He's a competitor. I want to lift her up. She was great. We need to lift people up. And I don't care if they're your biggest competitor. You should be proud that they've been successful. So it's done. I'm done with that. Because imagine the power we have when we're all on here saying, go, girl. And we say, Ben, get off the show. This is girl time. No, I'm just
Hey, I'm down. If a lady would like to relieve me for a week, 2 weeks, month, 2 months,
but we need to. Wouldn't that be? Yeah. What if I like took over as your host?
You could do
but
it.
I think we need to lift women up, and especially we're talking about minority and disadvantaged women. They're holding households together. Come on, lift them up.
Yeah, but you brought up a good point too, as people are just coming in with tons of support around this. Hit that like button, hit that love button. I think it's really interesting what you said though, because we've been hurt, we tend to hurt others. And just because we've been hurt, and I'm there's women, but there's men. I mean, we all do it. It's a cycle of pain. And we've been told to shut up, and we've been told not to have our voice at the table, because I've been told the same things as well. Obviously different, but my truth. We tend to externalize that again, and we tend to use that same hurt people, hurt others. That's right. And so I think I just wanted to reiterate that. Sorry, I'm mansplaining it, but I wanted to reiterate it because I want people to understand where it comes from, so that when their impulse is that, and to throw shade, that they stop themselves and they just say, hey, wait, hold on, where's that coming from? Let me unpack that in myself. Francine, we need to build other people up. Yeah. Maureen, if women did for women what men have done for men, we would be in a very different place today. Wow. Whew. Big. Vinny, Shana, Valencia, everybody's. This is great. People are clapping. This is great. This is great. Oh, I love it. I love it. Susan needs to guest host. Elizabeth's trying to kick me off. Hey, come on, girl. Let's do it. Let's do it. All day, real
Would
talk.
people like the questions I'd ask? That'd be a little scary.
I've been on the other end of the microphone with you, and it goes all over. Farrell, so proud to work for a woman-owned business. Thank you, Susan, for your encouragement. Susan, this has been incredible. You're incredible. I don't know if it was possible, but you may have even exceeded my expectations today.
Well,
I think I almost cried myself. So
well, you know what? We're just being real. This wasn't, you sent me some ideas of what we wanted to talk about, but you've created a safe environment where we can be real. And so thank you, Ben. And thank you because talk about bringing a voice. You're doing it and you're allowing us to have these. And I really challenge you to keep doing it and allow people to be real on this conversation and talk about things that are people have put in a box saying it's not politically correct to talk about race. Damn, it is. Yes, it is.
yeah.
And how there's so many things broken around it. So we've got to break these barriers. And if we can have some of these conversations here, I just thank you for letting me be part of it.
Well, thank you. And it's one thing for me to do it. It's another thing for you to do it. And that gives so many people permission. So thanks for being part of making our world better and making our industry better. Such a blessing. Thank you so much, Susan, for the time. Thank you to everybody that got involved. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Send some love to Susan. People are just coming in. Everybody's digging it. I love you guys so much out there. Thank you so much for being a part, taking time out of your day here. And Susan, thank you again. Just really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Keep going.
I will. Take care.